Right, thank you very much for inviting me to your congress. I'm apologising that the only Norwegian I know is tack, and that's about as far as it goes. So I hope most of you can actually understand what I'm saying. It's a great honour to be invited here on behalf of your party and for the Libertarian Party of the UK and for members of the International Alliance of Libertarian Parties, which was founded at the beginning of March. So we're very much hoping you as a party will be joining us. So I'm just waiting for this to actually come up. I was conned. I was told that I'd only have to do a 5-minute speech. I've had a look at the agenda now and it says 25 minutes. So what I'm hoping to do is I'll just run through what we did as a party 8 years ago and what to do and what not to do. As you can see, my presentation is how not to start a political party. Okay, then I want to actually put on here, there's a small YouTube video which I think is, I've used it many times just to demonstrate on how to actually build a movement as opposed to building a party, because all of you here are going to have to persuade the Norwegian people to back you. So you can have as many infights and as many discussions as you want. And in fact, Verborn actually introduced me to an amazing term yesterday, which I won't repeat here because it was actually quite derogatory about people who like sitting around in pubs talking endlessly about libertarianism and how many angels sit on a pinhead. That's not what it's about. It's persuading the Norwegian people to get back to liberalism as opposed to state socialism that is right across Europe. So the presentation then is how not to start a political party. There were about 4 or 5 members of us who were just actually screaming through probably 2006, 2007, saying there was going to be a major collapse. And at that point, the Conservative Party in the UK was actually promising that they were actually going to match all the Labour Party's spending policies. It was just how much money can we spend of your money? And it got to a point where we couldn't persuade anybody in the Conservative Party to follow sensible policies, that they got to start cutting back spending. They were just ramping up all the time as to how much they were going to spend. And it was just an arms race of money spending. So we actually formed the party in 2007. We were registered 3 days before the first run on a bank in 150 years occurred, which was the Northern Rock, which literally there were people queuing round the corner to actually get their money out. Something had not been seen in Britain, which was seen as a stable economic country for 150 years. So I'll move on to the first slide, if I can operate this. Clearly define your political stance. Clearly, very clearly. We started from a standing start, and I was a founder member, so I should have been either member number 1 through to 5. I ended up as member number 32 because there was such an uptake of members. We hit 2,000 very rapidly within the first 2 weeks, 2,000 members. Now, the problem was in actually sucking that amount of people in who define themselves as libertarian. You must define what you are as a libertarian party. I'll move on to the next slide. Are you an anarchist or a minarchist party? So important, because within 4 years we'd had a major bust-up between those who saw themselves as anarchists, some who saw themselves as left libertarians, and we had quite a few socialist libertarians, which always confused me. They never actually did see that this was an oxymoron. So there were huge, huge rows, and actually came to a rift in the party in 2011. So please take it from me as somebody who's actually gone through all the pain and tragedy in 2011 we've had there. You really do need to actually define whether you're an anarchist or a minarchist party. Oil and water, they don't mix. So we've came out as a minarchist party. We establish the fact that as libertarians, we still know that we're dealing with people. And people want to look after their children. They want to look after their old. They want to look after their sick. It's just how you go about it and how you fund it. The anarchist element, who likes sitting around in pubs, contemplating, oh, this is my part of freedom, this, that and the other, has no appeal to the British public, and I would argue to the Norwegian public, at all. It's of little interest. You can always tell somebody who is actually going to be a member of a successful political party if they can go out and stand on the doorstep and actually talk to an ordinary human being, instead of the groupthink that goes in a bar talking about the finer points of libertarianism. Those people are just incredibly boring. Now, I'm going to ask a question now, because I'm just trying to gauge how many of the people in this room I'm going to offend. How many people here are involved in IT? Right, I'm not going to offend anybody, because basically we had a group within the party who were just so IT focused, and basically I found that they just had no ability to talk to other members of the party, let alone members of the public, that we've got to persuade. We've got to roll back the state. You've got to take on individual responsibility for your actions if you're going to enjoy economic and personal freedom. Now, all I'm actually saying is we need IT people, but they can't dominate the party. Okay, so that is my one bit of advice that I can actually pass on to you from our experience over the last 8 to 9 years. Next thing, write a constitution, the rule book. We're all libertarians. We don't like rules in particular. Keep it short, keep it sweet, but make sure that you actually take a leaf out of our book, the American Party book, the Canadian. You need a constitution. You need a clear rule book. So basically, if there are going to be disputes, which there will be, that there is a clear set of defined guidelines on how to resolve those quickly and painlessly, so they don't drag on for months and years. So basically, we're now on to our third constitution, and possibly we will be revising that. We are a constitutional party. I'm actually standing down after 5 years as party leader, because I had full locks of hair when I first started out on this, and I've just lost the lot. So I think it's now time to actually pass on to a really good team that we've actually built up over the last 5 years. And basically, because we're great fans of the Swedish, it's not Swedish, I won't offend you by actually saying that, a great fan of the Swiss system is basically where if I ask you to name who is the Swiss Prime Minister, you won't be able to, because they haven't got one. So we've actually got that horrible word of collective leadership, where we have a group of about 5 or 6 people. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. But basically, 4 or 5 heads really are better than one. It also actually controls egos, which in my case is probably a very good thing. Right. Now, I can't really stress this enough. Don't go for mass membership. Absolutely, utterly pointless. I said from our very, 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 very first conference in 2008, I would rather have 50 activists than 50,000 members. And that the people that you've actually got doing the work in the party, never ever let it get down to the point where you've probably just got 2 or 3 people doing the actual physical work. Spread it around. Make sure you're devolving everything to across Norway, from the north to the south to the east to the west. That's the way the party will survive. It'll be the way that it grows. And it's also very important, and again I'm coming back to the IT thing here, is that basically we were billed as the first internet party in the UK. Big mistake. You need to get round tables. You need to share meals. You need to get to know each other. You need to know each other's little crazy little ways, and so that basically something that comes across on the internet comes across as really hostile and nasty could actually be quite humorous, and basically they thought they were being sardonic when they wrote it, and basically then you get, and I'm sure we're all aware of what the phrase is, flame wars starting. So really, you've actually got to get together like this all over the country, and the leaders of the party have got to get out there and actually build personal relationships with people. So important. It's the only way you're going to be able to sustain your party. Treat your website like Fort Knox. Again, this is one of my little things about the IT crowd that we had. We had an attempted coup. Basically, the first thing that we knew that they wanted to overturn the elected board of the party. So the first thing that went is these specialist IT people straight into the website, shut it down. None of us could actually get access to it. We're not the only party that have had this problem, and this comes back right to the beginning because we did not define ourselves as an anarchist party or a minarchist party. So basically, they wanted to be anarchists. Anarchists don't care what they do. Objectivists don't care what they do. They don't act in a constitutional manner. But the good thing was they actually grabbed the website and then lost all the passwords and everything else, and they lost control of the domain name anyway. So we'd rapidly, from our IT geeks on our side, rapidly got another website up, which now has actually got about 3 layers of protection on it. So always protect your website. And it's also not just your internal idiots you've actually got to worry about. And there's 1 or 2 in here that I'm sure that are already plotting, so be very, very careful. It's people from the socialist stroke hard left. In Britain, we've just had an election and a Scottish referendum where political intimidation has been so marked. It was almost like going back to the 1930s. It's hacking into websites, physically abusing people in the street, and you may or may not have actually seen it in the media. So basically, that is going to be one of your weak points, is that anybody can say anything about you by hacking into your website. So get as many levels of security that you can on actually what goes out in your name on your website. We've got a couple of good guys that if you actually do need any help with doing that, I will pass the names over to you. And I can't really stress that enough, because basically this is your calling card as what's actually going out into the big wide world. And anybody can type in anything like, we're going to massacre all the firstborn children in a family to cut down the welfare bill. And it can happen. It has happened. Not to us, fortunately. Right, effective leadership in herding cats. Libertarians are always known as, it's like herding cats to do anything. Now, the leadership, I'm sorry guys and girls, whoever's there, but there does come an occasion when you're going to have to strangle a few cats. It's the only way that you can actually maintain a discipline within the party. And for libertarians and individualists, this is a really hard thing to do, because effectively you're forming a collective, which is a bit difficult to equate between collective action and also being an individualist. But the people that you don't allow problems to go on too long. And there are people that you will need to eject from the party. In England, we've actually got an organisation that has come in from America, and it's called Common Purpose. Has anybody heard of this? Well, basically, it's an amazing organisation. It's like a left-wing Freemasonry. Basically, if you go on one of their courses and become a graduate of this, that basically you can be introduced by other public servants to get jobs in the public service. Our public service, military, police and public service and Whitehall are infected with these people. And it is our view that anybody who is a graduate of this pressure group needs to be ejected from a public service job. I was going to name the policewoman who was a member of Common Purpose, who was involved very heavily with there's no other way of saying it, the murder of a Brazilian electrician in the late 90s, who was actually killed on the underground when he was actually executed because they actually thought he was a terrorist. She was just so protected. She actually got promoted after that job and promoted again, to the point where she is now the head of some very secret organisation within Whitehall that the general public not even allowed to know what she's the head of, but she's paid very well to do it. So what we found ourselves having in our crisis in 2011 was a few members that we subsequently found out were members of Common Purpose. So it's very difficult. You're trying to build a membership of a party, and all of a sudden you're sucking people in that you don't know. And I would say to your potential leadership is, if you've got a doubt about anybody, don't be afraid to do a little bit of checking, because there will be fellow travellers who are not really friends of your party. They're there just to find out what's going on. And for all members of MI5 and CIA here today, please help yourself to the coffee. And you think I'm joking? Our chairman went to a meeting in Spain and was actually introduced to a guy who said, "Oh, I'm here from the CIA. We just need to know what's going on." Our local police force actually quite happily told me to my face at a meeting, "You're fortunate, Mr. Withers, you are at the moment just a person of interest. You're not on our domestic terrorist list yet." So that was a bit alarming. So your leadership has got to be effective. And as I said, you are going to have to strangle a few cats along the way, because they will not be friends to your party. Right, let's see where we got on to the next one. Now, you're going to be dealing with ordinary human beings who are probably not going to have in-depth knowledge or understanding about libertarianism, rolling back the state, not having mass spending. All they can actually see is the propaganda that will be used against you and has been used against us is that we want to sacrifice children, we want old people cast out into the gutter just to die in the streets, all for the sake, and we're all rich and we all just want to look after ourselves. So when you're actually talking to people in the street, slowly bringing them round to the way of thinking, is always use humour. It's a great deflator. Socialism and the socialist right and the socialist left always take themselves extremely seriously. It gives them gravitas. It makes them sound like they're really serious human beings looking after your interests, protecting you from the evils of the world and terrorists and everything else. The easiest thing to prick that bubble is to use humour against them. They've all got foibles, so you can use that humour against them. And basically, humour it makes you as a libertarian so much more human than some of these people that are driving around in bulletproof limousines. One of the biggest criticisms against the political elite in England is the fact they're so out of touch, and it is true. It's because they don't actually talk to real human beings anymore. They sit around in Hampstead, around dinner parties, reinforcing each other's insane ideas. And that's just the way it goes on. So the one thing I would recommend to you, and it's a cultural thing from England, is that the English actually like sardonic humour. I don't know about the Norwegians. Norwegians have got a bit of reputation of being very dour and very serious, but just try and use humour. It just gets you so much further. Don't try and lecture people on the doorstep. Don't lecture people at doorsteps. Have a joke with them, break it down slowly, and just make them realise what a ridiculous system that we've got. Is that in the UK, we've actually got 51% of the people are either directly or indirectly working for the state, and their income depends on that. So don't forget, they will be feeling threatened if you're proposing to chop their legs away from them. It's like the NHS. Everybody worships the NHS. It is the big thing. We can't do without this. It is the sacred cow. But you ask anybody in the UK, they will always say, the NHS, it's wonderful. It's brilliant. They saved my granny. They saved my child. And then 2 minutes later, they're telling you a horror story of where their granny actually died in hospital from blood poisoning through neglect. And I was reading the English translation of your leader's speech. It's true. Within a couple of minutes, you can start getting them to actually tell you horror stories that have actually happened. We've had a hospital trust that has actually been closed down by law called the Mid Staffordshire Trust. It actually killed 1,200 people. Nobody has been prosecuted. Nobody has actually faced a law for manslaughter for this. It's an absolute outrage, but it's still not happened. And even though we've just had a change of government, it still won't happen. because the last Labour government had a Law Commission report called 322 come through that said that all public servants must not be above the law. Jack Straw, who was our Home Affairs Minister, blocked it under pressure from the public service trades unions. So effectively now there is no way that you can actually murder somebody, and there's no other way of actually saying this, and you will never be prosecuted if you're a public servant. Now that's one thing, that is the one thing that as the Libertarian Party of the UK we're trying to get pushed through is Law Report 322, which actually recommended that that there should be no immunity for a public servant who carries out fraud, corruption, murder, and generally acts illegally. They should face the full rigour of the law. Only that way are we actually going to see things starting changing in favour of the individual. Right, the other important is to build a movement. Don't build egos. Don't say, well, I'm the leader of this party, I'm the regional director of this party, that party, and the rest of it. Forget all that. Basically, you've got to get on as friends, you've got to get on as colleagues, and you've actually got to remember the movement comes above your own personal ego. Something I've actually tried to put in place while I've been the leader, and I decided to go before I was pushed. So that's the reason why I'm standing down in this October. Right, what I'm hoping now is I want to just actually play you this.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen start to finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. So it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out and you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut and it's not two nuts. 3 is a crowd and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, then 3 more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point, and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. And over the next minute you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is overglorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the credit, but you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed a lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told that we all need to be leaders, but that would be really ineffective. The best way to make a movement, if you really care, is to courageously follow and show others how to follow. When you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first person to stand up and join in.
So you were actually moving on from this point. There's nothing else that I could really add to that. It's actually for us, and the reason why I use it, because it actually uses humour to actually get the point across. And I really can't think of anything better then just to pirate that off. No, I can't say pirate off that. Just take that off YouTube. And if you're doing a presentation, just use that. It just explains what we're all about so easily. I'm afraid that's all I've really got to bore you with about our experiences over the last 8 years. Unless you want me to sort of get back onto your agenda timetable, I'm quite happy to take any questions about our recent election. Otherwise, I'm equally happy to go rushing back and have another cup of coffee. It's up to you.
What's the size of the party?
We have dwindled probably down to around about 300 to 400 members now from a high point of 2,000. But the good thing is we actually stopped and we rebuilt. And the thing that we actually did was just get people who were committed. We have not bothered to actually put up any party members for this general election because I have no idea how much UKIP have actually spent. Probably in the region of £5 to £10 million and got one MP. We haven't got 5 to 10 million people, but we haven't lost any money either. So we are now growing, and our strategy all was to actually sit back and not do a membership push until the election had actually passed. And then since I was on the plane and I spent 11 hours at Brussels airport yesterday en route here due to the plane having to turn back, is basically I just sat there answering inquiry after inquiry after inquiry for membership. So basically we are back on the upward curve. We've changed our constitution now that we're actually forming small parties within the major party all over the country, and that's the way that we're operating. The figures I've just given you there does not count for the Scottish Libertarian Party, who we devolved away from 2 years ago under agreement. So if we get any inquiries from people in Scotland that actually want to join, we pass them on to them and vice versa. No bad feeling. It's, it works for them, it works for us, and we're very much for having a federal model for our party. No. No hope at all. No hope at all. I am 32 years of age, and for the last 40 years, since the age of 17, the first political organisation that I joined was the Electoral Reform Society, which has been going for 150 years, which has been saying first past the post system is ridiculous. You just go onto our party website or our party Facebook page. I think for UKIP, 4 million people voted for UKIP. They got one MP. 1.75 million people voted for the Greens. They got one MP. 3 million people voted for the SNP. They got 56 seats. So the big issue, and if you have a look at our manifesto, which is on the front page of our website, you'll see that constitutional reform and ending this corrupt farce that is first past the post is right at the top of the agenda. We called this 2 years ago as a party, and basically now it's at top of the agenda in the UK following this election. Basically, you've actually got a Conservative government that has actually just got in with 38% of the vote of the people who voted, which was around about 70%. So basically their mandate, their legitimacy and the people's consent rests on about 28% of the population. I'm sorry, as libertarians, we have to be consent to be governed by anybody. There is no consent under this present system. So to answer your question, no hope at all. All we can do is just actually keep pushing until we actually get to a list system, and from that point we will be the first nut without the shirt, and then basically we can actually build from that. If we can get a list system like they've got in other countries, we've actually got a chance of actually getting representatives. As some of our colleagues in the IALP have actually got list systems to the point where they can actually get an MEP into the European Parliament. And I won't spit on the floor because we're also very anti-EU as well. So I'm in a blessed country that is actually not part of the EU. Does that answer your question? Yeah. The simple answer was no. Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. It has been an honour to be here with you today. Thank you.